Maybe you are listening because the silence of your room feels more like an unfinished conversation. Perhaps there is a specific version of who you used to be that keeps visiting your thoughts. A ghost of a choice you made, or a path you did not take that still hums in the back of your mind. It is not that you are unhappy with your current days, but there is this lingering sense of a shadow following you, a feeling that you are trailing behind your own life, trying to gather the pieces of a story that ended long ago. You might find yourself replaying old dialogues, sharpening the edges of your past arguments, or wondering why you still care about who you were in a season that has already surrendered to the frost. The air in your room is cooling now, and the weight of your body is beginning to find a natural, slow rhythm against the mattress. The floorboards are still, the house has settled into its nighttime creak, and the dim light from the street lamp outside casts a soft, shifting geometry against your ceiling. You do not need to do anything with this light. You do not need to analyze the shadows. You only need to let your breathing become as effortless as the way the night air moves through the room. There is no performance required here, and there is certainly no one you need to prove yourself to tonight. You are not a broken vessel needing repair, and you are not a tangled mess that must be smoothed out before the sun rises. You are simply a person who has carried a long, heavy cloak for too long. And tonight, you are being invited to realize that you can simply let it slip from your shoulders. Maybe you have felt this quiet ache before, this persistent belief that if you could just get the past exactly right, if you could just find the perfect way to justify your journey, you would finally feel steady. But here is the strange, quiet truth that changes everything. The mind does not become still because you have finally rewritten your history. It becomes still when you stop trying to weave your regrets into a garment you think you must wear forever. You have been trying to make a cloak out of echoes, dear friend, and it is an exhausting work. You have been capturing every word you wish you had said, every moment you wish you had caught, and you have been stitching them together with a silver needle made of memory. But a cloak woven of echoes has no warmth, and it can never protect you from the wind of the present. The Buddhist way of seeing this is not about discarding the past or pretending it never happened. It is about recognizing that your attachment to who you were is actually the very thing preventing you from arriving where you are. We tend to believe that if we hold our history tightly enough, we can prevent it from being lost. We think that by replaying our mistakes, we are somehow honoring our potential, or at least keeping it within reach. But all this does is keep you living in the halls of a cave that you left years ago. You are not the echo of your past, and you are not the mistakes you might have made. You are the vast, open space in which these sounds appear and vanish, and that space is never touched by the noise. You are safe enough to soften, even if you are not sure what happens when you stop holding on. We will not be forcing the mind to empty itself, nor will we be fighting the thoughts that arrive like tired travelers seeking a place to sit. We will simply learn how to look at these thoughts for what they are. They are just echoes. They are just flickers of sound that belong to the past. And you do not need to give them a home in your heart tonight. You do not have to finish the weaving of your own story before you sleep. The pattern will be there tomorrow, if you want to look at it. But for these hours, you are permitted to set the needle down. You are allowed to stop being the one who gathers the ghosts. Does this sound familiar? This habit of trying to fix what has already passed. Perhaps you have spent so many hours in the dark trying to catch the whispers of who you were, believing that if you just understood the melody perfectly, you would be free. It is a very human impulse to want to save what is fading. But what if the peace you are looking for is not found in catching the echo? What if it is found in the moment you realize the cave is empty and you are free to walk out into the cooling night? We are going to move very slowly through this. You do not need to memorize a teaching or reach a state of perfect stillness. If your mind wanders to the tasks of tomorrow, that is perfectly fine. You can simply notice that it has wandered and then bring your attention back to the rhythm of your breath. That return is the practice. It is not about keeping the mind empty. It is about keeping the heart compassionate as you witness your own wandering. You are doing enough simply by being willing to listen to the silence. As we prepare to enter the first story, let your hands relax, fingers uncurling against the fabric of your bed. Let the tension in your jaw dissolve. The small muscles around your eyes letting go. You are beginning to settle into the foundation of your own being. You are not trying to be a finished master or a perfectly resolved soul. You are just a guest in this moment of deep, sheltering quiet. There is no reason to solve your life tonight, and there is no reason to carry the weight of the cloak into your dreams. The threads can wait. The echoes can dissipate. You are finally, completely allowed to rest. In a high, wind-swept reach of the mountains, where the air is so thin that voices seem to lose their urgency, there once lived a man named Kaito. Kaito was not a monk, nor was he a hermit. He was a collector of sounds. For reasons he could no longer quite explain, he had spent the better part of a decade inside a deep limestone cave, listening to the echoes that bounced off the cavern walls. Every time he spoke a regret, or recalled a bitter word from a failed relationship, or whispered a name he had long ago cast aside, the cave would catch the sound. It would ripple against the damp, cold stone, returning the noise to him in a softer, phantom tone. Kaito became convinced that these echoes were the true history of his life. He believed that if he could just capture them all, he would be able to weave them into a garment that would protect him from the biting cold of his own isolation. He would spend his days with a silver needle made of polished bone, pretending to sew the mist of these echoes into a cloak of rough grey wool. He worked with a fierce, trembling intensity. His hands were always moving, always stitching, always trying to turn a hollow sound into a solid thing. He was terrified that if he stopped, the sounds would dissipate and he would be left with nothing to show for his years of sorrow. The cave was always damp. The air smelled of wet stone and ancient minerals. Kaito's skin had grown pale, his eyes wide and restless, perpetually searching for the next whisper to snag and pull into his fabric. One afternoon, when the light outside had turned the color of a bruised plum, an elderly hermit arrived at the entrance of the cave. The hermit did not speak. He did not carry a staff or a pack. He simply stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the golden orange of the setting sun. He watched Kaito for a long time. Kaito, caught in the rhythm of his sewing, did not even look up. He was busy trying to fasten a particularly sharp echo of an argument he had lost 20 years ago. He pulled the silver needle through the air, trying to catch the tail end of the sound, but his fingers only met the cold, empty space. The hermit stepped forward, his bare feet making no sound on the grit of the cave floor. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small wooden cup, completely empty. He placed it on the flat stone bench where Kaito kept his materials. He then pointed to the cloak, which was now a heavy, misshapen bundle of threads that looked more like a tangled web than any garment a person could wear. The hermit waited. Kaito finally stopped his sewing. He looked at the hermit, his breath ragged, his heart racing from the effort of his labor. The hermit did not offer a teaching. He did not point out the futility of the work. Instead, he reached out and touched the cloak. He moved his hand over the knots and the loose ends, feeling the weight of the echoes caught within. Then he looked at Kaito and made a gentle, circling motion with his hand, as if he were trying to draw something from the air that wasn't there. Kaito watched, confused. The hermit took his wooden cup, turned it upside down, and tapped it against the stone bench. It made a sharp, clean sound. A sound that had no echo, a sound that was finished the moment it happened. The hermit smiled, a slow, deep unfolding of his face, and gestured toward the mouth of the cave. He wanted Kaito to see the valley below, which was currently being swallowed by the rising tide of the evening mist. Kaito hesitated. He looked at his cloak, the work of his entire life, the heavy, suffocating record of every mistake he had ever made. Then he looked at the hermit, who stood with an ease that Kaito had never known. The hermit walked toward the light. He didn't ask Kaito to follow, but he left the wooden cup behind on the stone bench. Kaito sat in the silence for a long, heavy hour. The cave felt different now. The echoes didn't seem quite so important. The cloak felt less like a garment and more like a shroud. He reached out and touched the wooden cup. It was cool, smooth, and utterly silent. For the first time in 10 years, Kaito noticed that the wind was blowing through the cave, not because he was trying to catch it, but because the cave was a hollow place that invited the wind in. He looked at his silver needle. It was sharp, cold, and entirely useless for the task he had given it. He realized then that he had been spending his life trying to hold on to the wind. He had been trying to build a shelter out of the very things that had already blown away. The weight of the cloak was not the weight of his history. It was the weight of his refusal to let the sounds settle. He had been standing in the middle of a vast, breathing mountain, but he had been living entirely inside the narrow, dark corners of his own replayed regrets. The hermit had not told him to stop. He had only shown him the cup. A cup is only useful because it is empty. A life is only lived because it is willing to let the echoes pass through. Kaito took the cloak. He didn't tear it apart, and he didn't try to fold it neatly. He simply walked to the edge of the cave, where the air was cold and clean, and he let the bundle drop. It didn't fall like a garment. It fell like a collection of dust, the grey threads unravelling into nothingness as they tumbled down the cliffside. The wind caught the remnants, and in seconds, there was no cloak left. There was only the sound of the wind singing against the rock and the sudden, terrifying, wonderful silence of a man who no longer had a history to carry. He went back inside, sat on the stone bench, and picked up the wooden cup. He didn't try to catch anything with it. He just held it. He realized that the cup didn't need to be filled to be perfect. The stillness of the cave was now filled with the natural respiration of the mountain. He took a long, slow breath, feeling the air fill his lungs and then leave, just like the echoes, just like the thoughts, just like the mad bean. A moment ago, he was finally, truly in the cave, but he was no longer a prisoner of it. You might feel, just like Kaito, that you have been sewing a cloak of echoes for years. You have gathered the fragments of your life, the difficult memories, and the sharp words, and you have tried to turn them into a form that explains your existence. You think this garment proves you were here, or that it somehow justifies the paths you have walked. But every thread of that cloak is an attempt to stop the movement of your life. It is an attempt to make the passing wind stay still, and the more you try to weave it, the heavier it becomes, and the more you find yourself trapped in the dark of your own making. This is the moment to pause, just as the hermit paused by the door. You do not have to throw away your memories, and you do not have to pretend. Your history was not difficult. You only have to see the needle in your hand. You only have to notice the way you were trying to stitch together. The air, it is a tiring work, and you are allowed to be exhausted. You are allowed to admit that the cloak has never kept you warm. The cave is large enough for you to stand up, to stretch, and to walk toward the light without having to explain your journey to anyone. As you lie here, in the deepening quiet of your own room, notice the thoughts that come to you. Are they echoes? Are they sounds that have already passed, trying to convince you to weave them into a story you must keep? When you feel the urge to pick up the needle, when you feel the habit of overthinking taking hold, can you remember the wooden cup? Can you remember the silence of a sound that does not echo? You don't have to force your mind to go quiet. You only have to realize that you are not the weaver. You are the space where the sounds appear, and you are the space where they are permitted to vanish. There is a natural rhythm to the mountain, and there is a natural rhythm to your own heart. It does not need your guidance to beat. It does not need your permission to be still. When you stop trying to capture the past, you find that the present is not as cold or as frightening as you feared. The wind of life is always moving, but it is not trying to hurt you. It is only trying to flow through you, to keep your heart alive, to keep the mountain of your being vast and open. You are beginning to rest now, not by resolving everything, but by choosing to set the needle down. You are finally, in your own way, stepping out of the cave. This story of Kaito is not telling us that our memories are bad, or that we should aim for a mind that is entirely blank. It is not asking you to become a stone that feels no heat, or a hollow pipe that carries no song. Kaito's suffering was not created by the fact that he remembered his past. His suffering was born from the way he treated his memories, as if they were solid objects he had to stitch together to survive. When we look at our own lives, we often find ourselves acting just like Kaito in his damp limestone cave. We find a difficult moment, a harsh word, or a failure we cannot seem to forgive, and we decide that this fragment must be saved. We think it must be preserved and woven into the very fabric of who we are, or else we might lose our way. But this is where the mind begins to add a second, heavier layer of pain to the original event. The first pain is what life brought to your doorstep. It is the sting of a rejection, the sorrow of a loss, or the sharp edge of a mistake. These are the winds that blow through every human life. They are the sounds that enter the cave because the cave is open. That first pain is natural. It is a part of being alive. But the second layer of pain is the one we create ourselves. When we refuse to let the sound pass through, we grab the sound, we hold on to it, we say, "This belongs to me, I must fix this. I must make this sound into something permanent so that I can wear it and feel safe." This is the great quiet trap of our own design. We mistake the echo for the person who made it. We confuse the ghost of who we were with the reality of who we are standing here tonight. When you feel that tightness in your chest as you lie in bed, that sinking sense of not being enough, or that nagging urge to correct the past, ask yourself if you are living in the present moment, or if you are once again inside the cave with your silver needle. You are trying to weave a sense of safety out of thin air. You are trying to build a shelter out of echoes that have already moved on. The irony is that the moment you stop reaching for the thread, the moment you open your hands, the safety you were looking for actually arrives. This is what we mean when we speak of letting go. It does not mean you are abandoning your life or becoming indifferent to your own story. It means you are choosing to stop treating your history as a project that must be completed before you are allowed to rest. You can care deeply about your journey without needing to possess every single moment of it. You can acknowledge your mistakes without needing to carry them in a cloak of heavy wool. The stillness Kaito found in that wooden cup is available to you right here in the quiet of this night. That cup was perfect because it didn't try to be anything other than a space to hold what was offered. It didn't try to become a basket or a storehouse or a record of every tea it had ever held. You are being invited to live your life with the same grace as that empty vessel. Think of the ways you hold on to your own thoughts. When a memory arises, do you feel the need to grab it and pin it to your heart? Do you feel that if you let it go, you will lose a piece of your own identity? This is the fear that speaks in the dark. It tells you that you are only the sum of your memories, and that if you don't keep them organized and stitched together, you will simply dissolve. But the truth is much softer. You are not a collection of memories. You are the deep, resonant space that allows memories to come and go. The Buddhist insight here is that we are not the objects we hold, and we are not the stories we weave. We are the awareness that witnesses it all. When you feel the need to weave, you are experiencing a moment of attachment. You are attaching to the idea that you are a person who must fix the past to be worthy of the present. But what if you were already worthy? What if the peace you are looking for has been waiting under the layer of extra effort you have been adding? The extra effort is the stitching. The extra effort is the belief that you must be the architect of your own history, rather than a participant in the unfolding beauty of your life. Take a slow breath and notice how your body responds to this idea. You might feel a subtle shift in the muscles of your neck, or a gentle release in your hands. You don't have to change anything about your past right now. You don't even have to forgive yourself completely for every stitch you have made. You only have to recognize that the cave you have been living in is not your home. It is a place you have been visiting, and the door has been unlocked the entire time. You are allowed to set the cloak down. You are allowed to stand up and walk toward the light, even if you are not sure what you will find outside. The suffering we feel when we cling to the past is often we think that by replaying the scene, we are somehow preparing for the next one. We think that if we analyze the echo, we will become masters of our own fate. But you cannot master the wind. You can only learn to move with it. You cannot master the echoes. You can only learn to hear them without needing them to be something they are not. The sounds that haunt your mind tonight are not commands. They are not judges. They are not tests you are failing. They are just echoes of a wind that has already passed through the mountain. When you notice your mind beginning to weave, you don't have to scold it. You don't have to treat your overthinking as a failure of your character. That is just another way of weaving more thread. Instead, simply label it. You can call it thinking, or remembering, or even just echo. When you give the sound a name, it loses its power to hold you. It becomes just a sound, and you become the one who is listening. You are the mountain. You are the deep, quiet cave. You are the space, and the space is never, ever trapped by the sound. This realization is the start of a deep and profound rest. It is the beginning of a way of being, that does not require you to hold the whole world in your hands. You are already held. You are already supported by the very life that breathes through you. You are part of the vast natural flow of the universe, and the universe does not need you to be perfect to belong. It only needs you to be present. It only needs you to be here, breathing, feeling, and watching the echoes pass by like clouds across a bright summer sky. You are doing enough. You have done enough for today. The silver needle is cold, and the bone is dry, and the cloak is no longer needed. You can let the threads fall. You can let the memories settle like dust. On the floor, there is no urgency here. There is no deadline for your healing. You can take this as slowly as you need to. You are currently in the process of becoming someone who knows how to rest, and that is a beautiful, sacred, and entirely worthy endeavor. The rest of the night belongs to you. It belongs to the stillness. It belongs to the empty cup waiting to be whatever the morning might bring. You are not the weaver. You are the one who is finally, after such a long time, free to listen to the silence. If it feels right, begin by finding a posture that allows your body to simply be. You do not need to sit in any particular way, and you certainly do not need to perform stillness. Just let your weight sink into the mattress, feeling the points of contact between your frame and the bed. Notice the way the air in your room feels against your skin, cool and neutral. Take a slow, quiet breath, letting the air move all the way down into your belly, and then release it, letting go of the need to manage the rhythm. You are simply watching the movement like a person sitting by a shore, watching the tide come and go. Now, bring your attention to the mind. You might notice that thoughts are still appearing, like soft, rhythmic pulses of sound. Perhaps you are thinking of a conversation from earlier, or a worry that has been hovering at the edge of your awareness, or even a judgment about how you are doing with this practice. Whatever arises, do not try to silence it. Do not try to push it away or correct it. Instead, treat each thought as an echo, a sound that has already been spoken and is now merely fading into the stillness of the cave. You are the space where these sounds occur. You are not the sound itself. If you like, imagine you are holding that wooden cup from Kaito's story. It is empty, smooth, and waiting in your open palm. When a thought comes that feels heavy, a regret or a fear that you have been trying to stitch into your life, just notice it. Give it a name if that helps. Perhaps simply calling it memory, or anticipation, or concern. And then, gently, imagine placing that thought into the cup. You do not need to do anything else. You do not need to analyze the thought, or judge it, or decide what it means. Just hold it there, in the open space of the cup, and observe it with the same gentle curiosity the hermit showed to Kaito. Notice what happens when you stop trying to weave that thought into the fabric of who you are. Does the weight of it change? Does it feel less like a sharp needle and more like a soft, passing whisper? It is okay if it still feels heavy. It is okay if you cannot quite let it go yet. Even noticing that you are trying to hold on is a powerful act of awareness. That noticing is the moment you step out of the dark of the cave and into the cooler, cleaner air of the present. You are not failing if the mind continues to wander, because the mind is simply doing what it has been trained to do. You are not the mind's training. You are the one who is witnessing the training. And that witness is always, fundamentally, at peace. Take another breath, deep and slow. And as you exhale, imagine the cup becoming lighter, the thought dissolving into the silence of the room. You don't have to empty the cup completely. You don't have to solve everything tonight. You are just practicing the art of not clinging. You are learning that the echoes of your life do not have to be captured to be understood. They can exist, and then they can pass, and you remain perfectly whole in the quiet aftermath. If a new worry arises, just place it in the cup, let it sit there for a moment, and then feel your hand opening, letting the cup rest on the stone bench of your own awareness. There is no standard for how this should feel. Maybe you feel a slight tingling in your hands, or a heaviness in your limbs, or just a sense of having slowed down. All of these are fine. The goal is not a specific outcome, but a different relationship with your own inner life. You are moving from a weaver who feels responsible for every thread to a listener who is content to let the mountain sing its own song. This is a practice of kindness toward yourself. It is a way of saying that you are safe enough to stop fighting the past, and you are brave enough to trust the present. If you find yourself becoming frustrated, if the thoughts seem to crowd the cup, just return to the breath. The breath is the constant movement that never needs to be stitched into a story. It just flows. It is the wind of the mountain, moving through you, keeping you alive, keeping you connected to the world, and asking nothing in return. Just feel the cool air entering your nose, the expansion in your chest, and the release. That is all you need to do. That is the whole of the teaching, right there in the simple, quiet movement of your own life. There is no rush to finish this practice. You can rest here as long as you like. You can sit with the cup, watching the thoughts come and go, knowing that you are the space that holds them. You are safe. You are held by the earth. You are protected by the night, and you are far more vast than the echoes that pass through your mind. As you continue to breathe, let the edges of your body soften even further. Let the muscles in your face relax. Let the tension in your shoulders drop away, down into the bed, down into the floor, down into the solid, unmoving ground. You are beginning to see, perhaps, that the cloak of echoes was never your own. It was something you were taught to wear, a garment of expectations and fears that you mistook for your own skin. But you are not the garment. You are the one who is choosing to take it off. And as you take it off, layer by layer, you discover that you are not vulnerable. You are relieved. You are free. You are finding that beneath the weight of your history, there is a core of stillness that has always been there, waiting for you to realize that you never had to earn it. Let the silence of the room become your companion. It is a friendly silence, a silence that knows you, a silence that has been waiting for you to come home. You don't have to speak to it. You don't have to explain yourself to it. You only have to be present in it, like the mountain stands in the quiet of the night. Feel the gentle pressure of the blanket against your legs. Feel the warmth of your own heartbeat, a steady, rhythmic reminder that you are still here, still whole, and still capable of finding rest. Whenever you are ready, you can let the image of the cup fade, or you can keep it there, a simple, elegant reminder of the space you have created. It does not matter. The practice is not a tool to be used and then discarded. It is a way of being that you are slowly, gently inviting into your heart. You are not trying to change who you are. You are simply clearing away the dust of the echoes so that the original, quiet light of your being can shine through. And that is more than enough for tonight. That is a wonderful, peaceful place to be. You are doing well. Just keep breathing, keep softening, and keep letting go until the very air feels like it is holding you. There is nowhere else you need to be, and there is nothing else you need to do, but simply rest in the truth of this moment. Years later, Kaito had left the limestone cave entirely. He lived in a small, humble hut at the base of the mountain, where the air was warmer and the sounds of the world could reach him without being distorted by rock and shadow. He was no longer a collector of echoes, but he had not become a master of anything either. He was simply a man who kept a garden of hardy mountain herbs and tended to his own simple needs. The struggle, however, did not vanish overnight. The mind is a stubborn weaver. It remembers the feeling of the needle, and it longs for the weight of the cloak. One spring, a young woman from the village arrived at his door. She was distraught, carrying a bundle of dried, brittle reeds that she had been trying to braid into a basket. She had been working for weeks, she explained, but every time she finished a handle, the reeds would snap. She was weeping, not because of the basket, but because she felt that if she could not finish this single, small task, it proved she was useless, a failure in the eyes of her family. She sat on Kaito's porch, her fingers raw and bleeding, the broken pieces of the reeds scattered at her feet like dead insects. Kaito watched her. He saw the same fever in her eyes that he had once carried in his own. He saw the same desperate need to make something permanent, something that would define her worth. He did not offer her a lecture. He did not tell her to breathe or to let go. Instead, he went into his kitchen and brought out a basin of water. He placed the basin on the ground beside her and gestured for her to put the dry, brittle reeds into the water. She looked at him with confusion, but she obeyed. They sat in silence as the reeds soaked. The water was clear, caught from a nearby spring, and as the reeds absorbed the moisture, their color began to change. The brittle, grey fibers turned a deep, rich green. They softened. They became supple. The young woman watched, her breathing slowly beginning to match the rhythmic dripping of the roof eaves after a light rain. Kaito picked up one of the dampened reeds and bent it into a circle. It did not snap. It held its shape, flexible and strong, a testament to the fact that when something is allowed to be hydrated, it finds its own resilience. He did not show her how to weave the basket. He only handed her a damp reed and smiled. The young woman looked at the reed in her hand, then at the basin, and finally at the mountain rising above them. She didn't finish the basket that day. She didn't become a master weaver in an afternoon. But she did something just as profound. She stopped crying. She picked up a damp reed and began to slowly, carefully, bend it into a shape that wasn't a basket at all, but a simple, open loop. She was no longer fighting the material. She was listening to what it needed to become. Kaito watched her, and he felt a sudden, deep recognition. He saw that the reeds were not his life, and they were not her worth. They were just reeds. The suffering had never been in the snapping of the fiber. It was in the insistence that the dry, dead material had to be forced into a shape it could not sustain. He looked at his own hands, calloused from years of gardening, and he realized he was still holding on to the ghost of his own expectations. He had been trying to garden the mountain instead of just growing a few herbs. He didn't speak a word of wisdom to the girl. He just sat by the basin, letting the water soak into the dry places of his own heart. He recognized that even in his quiet life, there were still moments where he wanted to force the seasons. There were still days where he wanted the harvest to arrive before the rain had finished its work. But in this moment, watching the reeds soften, he chose a different path. He chose not to weave. He chose simply to sit with the girl, to acknowledge her pain without trying to fix it, and to trust the water. This was his transformation. It wasn't a sudden explosion of enlightenment. It was the simple, quiet decision to let the reeds be what they were. When the girl finally left, she carried her bowl of damp reeds back toward the village. She didn't look like a woman who had mastered her fate, but she looked like someone who had found the capacity to breathe. Kaito went back to his garden. He pulled a few weeds, but he didn't pull them with the intensity of a man trying to change the world. He pulled them with the casual, steady movement of a man who knows that tomorrow more weeds will grow, and that is perfectly fine. You see, the transformation happens in the space between the impulse to fight and the choice to soften. When the young woman felt the urge to snap the reed, she felt the impulse to punish herself. When she saw the reed soften in the water, she felt the possibility of mercy. You are capable of this same mercy. You do not need to be a hermit on a mountain to practice it. You can practice it in the middle of your living room, or in the middle of a difficult conversation, or in the middle of a long, sleepless night. The next time you feel the brittle edge of your own stress, ask yourself what water you might be denying yourself. Is it the water of permission? The permission to be unfinished, to be tired, or to be wrong? Is it the water of patience, the patience to wait for your own internal climate to shift? Often, we are just like those dry reeds. We are brittle because we have been trying to stay rigid in a world that is always changing. We are snapping because we have forgotten how to be supple, how to bend, how to let the moisture of grace return to the dry parts of our history. Transformation is not about becoming a new person. It is about returning to the person you already are before the brittleness took hold. It is about recognizing that your worth is not a basket you have to weave. It is the water itself. It is the capacity to soften, to feel, and to hold space for whatever is currently arriving. When you find yourself in a moment of struggle, pause, take a single breath. Look at the difficulty not as a failure, but as a reed that needs to be soaked in the water of your own compassion. You might find that when you stop forcing, the thing you are trying to create reveals a different shape. Maybe the basket isn't what you need. Maybe the open loop is enough. Maybe the stillness is what you were actually seeking all along. The beauty of this path is that it invites you to be exactly who you are, in the middle of whatever you are currently facing. You don't have to be better than you are. You only have to be kinder than you have been. You don't have to be stronger than you are. You only have to be willing to let the water reach the parts of you that have grown dry. This is the secret of the mountain garden. The plants grow because they are tended, yes, but mostly they grow because they are allowed to. They are allowed to take the rain, and they are allowed to endure the sun, and they are allowed to return to the earth when their time comes. They are not striving to be anything other than what they were designed to be. You are the same. You have a nature that is inherently capable of peace, and that nature does not disappear just because you are having a difficult day. It is always there, waiting for you to stop fighting it, waiting for you to let the water in. Listen to the stillness of your own room. The silence is not a void. It is the basin of water. It is the space where the dry, brittle reeds of your thoughts can finally rest. You are not meant to be a finished product, a perfectly woven basket that never breaks. You are meant to be a living, breathing being that knows how to bend in the wind and how to soften in the rain. You are doing well. You are learning to let go. And that is a slow, quiet, holy work. There is no need to measure your progress. You cannot measure the softening of a reed, and you cannot measure the opening of a heart. You only know. It is happening because the world begins to feel a little less sharp. You feel a little less inclined to judge yourself. You feel a little more comfortable in your own skin, and that is enough. That is everything. Rest into that feeling. Let it be the ground upon which you build your dreams tonight. You are not a weaver of brittle things. You are a person who has discovered the water. And you are finally, softly, beginning to bloom. It is common to believe that our suffering is caused entirely by the events that happen to us. We look at the difficult chapters of our history, the moments where we felt rejected, or the times we failed, and we assume that these events are the sole source of the weight we feel. But if you look closely at the way your mind operates in the dark, you might see that you have been adding a second, heavier layer of weight to those original events. The first pain is the raw reality of life. It is the sting of a cold wind, the soreness of a bruise, or the echo of a hard word spoken to you. You cannot avoid these things entirely because you are a living, breathing human being, participating in the unpredictable flow of existence. These events are simply the weather of your life. The second pain, however, is not the weather. It is the building you have constructed to try and hide from the storm. It is the structure of resistance, the architecture of control, and the deep, silent shame you have used to try and fix yourself. When you feel the first pain, your mind immediately begins to search for a reason. It asks why this happened, and it creates stories about what this means for your future. It tells you that you are not enough, that you should have known better, or that you must never let this happen again. This internal narrating is not meant to hurt you. It is a misguided attempt to protect you. Your mind thinks that if it can label, analyze, and judge your pain, it can somehow prevent that pain from ever touching you again. But this resistance is like trying to hold back the tide with a net made of silk. You are exhausted because you are fighting against the natural movement of your experience. You are trying to freeze the river of your life so you can categorize it and eventually conquer it. You have turned your pain into an identity because you think that if you understand your history perfectly, you will finally earn the right to be at peace. You keep replaying the past, hoping for a different outcome, and you keep rehearsing the future, hoping to build a fortress that no surprise can breach. But the more you fight to control the variables of your life, the less you are able to live within it. Think of the way you relate to your own internal landscape. When a memory of a mistake surfaces, do you meet it with the same compassion you would offer a friend? Or do you pick up the needle and begin to stitch that mistake into the cloak of your identity? When you need approval from others to feel that you are worthy, you are handing the steering wheel of your life over to people who do not know the path you are walking. You are looking for a sense of home in the reactions of others, but no one else can provide the stillness that is already waiting inside your own foundation. You are looking for a key in a room where the door has never been locked. This is the central insight of the path we are walking together tonight. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. Peace is the abandonment of the struggle to make your life different than it currently is. It is the shift from being a guard who patrols the borders of your own heart to being a host who opens the door to whoever is passing through. When you stop judging your feelings, you stop the process of layering pain upon pain. You can feel the first sting of a difficult emotion without feeling the second, sharper pang of self-hatred. You can feel the sadness of a loss without feeling the added confusion of thinking that you have somehow failed because you are sad. You are being invited to stop the work of self-correction. You have spent so many hours trying to polish the mirror of your mind, believing that if you could just remove the last smudge of regret, you would finally see a perfect image. But the mirror is not for you to look at. The mirror is for the world to reflect in. And it is the nature of a mirror to catch dust, to hold fingerprints, and to be clouded by the moisture of the room. You do not need to be a pristine, unblemished surface to be worthy of your own existence. You just need to be a space where life can happen. This does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become a person who is blind to your own mistakes. It means you stop using those mistakes as weapons against yourself. You can take responsibility for your actions without accepting the weight of shame. You can learn from your history without becoming a prisoner to it. When you drop the habit of fighting, the mind begins to settle on its own, like the silt in a stream when the water finally stops being churned. You don't have to force the water to be clear. You only have to stop stirring the bottom. If you find yourself feeling uneasy as you hear these words, notice that unease. That is simply the feeling of letting go of an old, familiar shield. You have relied on that shield for a long time, and it feels strange to imagine walking without it. You might worry that if you stop trying to fix yourself, you will lose your way or become someone you don't recognize. But what if the person you are underneath all the fixing is much kinder, much stronger, and much more at peace than the version of you that is currently holding the shield? What if the struggle you have been maintaining is the only thing standing between you and the natural, quiet life you have been seeking? There is a profound freedom in realizing that you are not the voice in your head. That voice is just a commentator, an observer that is trying to keep you safe by making sense of the noise. It is not the master of the house. You are the host of the house, and you are the one who decides whether to listen to the commentator or to simply go about your evening. You don't have to agree with every anxious thought that arrives. You don't have to follow every fear that tries to lead you down a path of what if. You can just let them exist, like guests who have dropped by for tea, knowing that they will leave when their time is up. You have been doing the work of a lifetime, and it is a heavy, draining work. But tonight, you are being offered a holiday from that burden. You are being asked to set down the tools of self-improvement and just be. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be uncertain about where you are going, because no one, not even the most enlightened soul, knows the exact shape of tomorrow. Your life is not a math problem to be solved or a project to be perfected. It is a story to be inhabited, and the most important part of inhabiting a story is knowing when to stop reading and simply rest. Notice the way your breath is moving now, deep in the belly, rhythmic and unconcerned with your thoughts. Your body knows how to live without your constant supervision. Your heart beats, your lungs expand, and your cells renew themselves, all without you having to manage a single detail. Why not extend that same trust to your mind? Why not allow your thoughts to just happen the way the clouds pass over the mountain, without feeling that you must manage the weather? You are safe. You are held. You are being supported by the simple, ancient rhythm of your own existence, and that is a foundation that no thought can shake. As you continue to listen, see if you can feel the difference between the noise of the mind and the presence of the heart. The mind is always moving, always pointing toward the future or the past, always comparing and categorizing. The heart is always here, always steady, always capable of meeting whatever is currently happening with a soft, open awareness. When you move your attention from the head to the heart, you are stepping out of the hall of echoes and into the open, sun-warmed courtyard of the present. You are moving from a state of performance to a state of being. And in that courtyard, there is plenty of room for you to simply exist. There is no prize for winning the argument with yourself. There is no medal for being the person who worried the most effectively. There is only the quiet, gentle reality of this moment, which is already enough. You have been running a race where there is no finish line, and the only way to win is to stop running. Stop pushing, stop pulling, stop trying to turn the reed into a basket by force. Just let the water soak in. Just let the reed be what it is, and just let yourself be the one who sits in the garden, breathing, watching, and finally, deeply, allowing the peace to reach you. You are doing well, and you are far closer to the stillness than you dared to believe. This wisdom is not reserved for the mountain or for moments of profound silence. It is meant to be walked with you into the noise of your Tuesday morning, into the flickering screen of your phone, and into the heavy, quiet hours when you lie awake wondering if you have done enough. Consider the way you wait for a message that does not arrive. The mind immediately begins to weave a story, creating a narrative of why that silence is happening and why it reflects your own value. You feel the sting of the silence, which is the first natural pain of a human connection. That is, not responding as you hoped. But then the mind adds the extra layer. It begins to replay every word you sent, judging your tone, questioning your worth, and rehearsing an apology you have not yet needed to give. When you notice this happening, you are already standing at the edge of the cave. Instead of diving back into the dark to weave, pause. Take that one single, conscious breath. Acknowledge that the ache of waiting is real, but recognize that the story you are building about your worth is just another thread you have picked up. Busy. You can choose to leave the thread on the floor. You can acknowledge the anxiety of the wait, without letting it become a judgment on your character. You don't have to fix the silence. You don't have to bridge the distance with your own nervous energy. You are allowed to be a person who is waiting, without being a person who is falling apart. This same softness applies when you lie in bed at night, reviewing the day as if it were a scroll that must be edited before the morning. You scrutinize the mistake you made at work, the sharp word you used, or the moment you felt awkward. You think that if you look at these things long enough, you can somehow undo them. But the scroll is written in permanent ink, and your current worry cannot change the past. When you feel that urge to replay the scenes, recognize it for what it is. It is the desire for a sense of control, a hope that, by analyzing your failures, you can prevent them from happening again. But that control is an illusion. You do not have to edit the day to earn your sleep. You are allowed to close the book, put it on the shelf, and trust that the story of your life will continue tomorrow. When you compare your own messy reality to the polished, edited version of someone else's life on a screen, remember the mountain. Do not let the echo of someone else's success become the master of your own garden. You do not know the depth of their cave, and they do not know the richness of your soil. The urge to compare is just another attempt to find a standard of safety that doesn't actually exist. Return to your own breath, your own pulse, and your own room. That is the only place where your life is actually occurring. Perhaps you have felt the weight of pretending to be okay, when you are actually feeling quite heavy. You smile at your colleagues, you nod at your friends, and you carry your own exhaustion like a hidden iron garment beneath your clothes. You think that if you show the weight, you will be a burden. But this too is a form of weaving. You are trying to craft a version of yourself that is acceptable to the world, and you are working so hard to maintain that image that you have forgotten how to simply stand. You don't have to carry that weight alone. You can be honest about your fatigue, even if it is only to yourself. You can say, "I am tired," without feeling that this honesty is a failure. Even the desire for rest can become a battleground. You lie down, and the moment you stop moving, the mind begins to scream that you haven't done enough today. You feel the guilt of the stillness. You feel as though rest must be earned through a day of perfect productivity. But look at the mountain. The mountain does not earn its stillness. Your nature, because that is its nature. Your nature is not to be a machine of output. Your nature is to be a part of the world that knows how to expand and how to contract when you feel the guilt rising. Do not fight it. Name it. Say to yourself, "This is the feeling of guilt. This is the echo of the idea that I must be productive to be worthy." Then, let the idea pass. You don't have to believe the thought just because it appeared in your head. You are practicing a form of discipline that looks very different from the world's definition. The world calls you to be faster, sharper, and more rigid. This practice calls you to be more present, more flexible, and more kind. Choosing to stop the weaving is a disciplined act. It requires more courage to sit with an uncomfortable feeling than it does to distract yourself with a story of control. It requires more strength to be vulnerable with your own needs than it does to build a fortress of perfection. Every time you notice your mind beginning to loop, and every time you choose to return to the breath instead of the story, you are tending to your own inner temple. This is not a project that you will ever finish. You will not one day wake up and never have an anxious thought again. You will not one day reach a state of grace where the world stops challenging you. But you will reach a state where you are no longer the one who adds the second layer of pain. You will become a person who can move through the weather of your life without trying to build a cave out of your own fear. You will become a person who knows how to be with your own thoughts without being controlled by them. And that, dear friend, is the greatest shift you could ever make. When the urge to control a relationship arises, when you feel the fear that someone might leave or someone might judge you, take a moment to look at your hands. Are they clenched? Are they reaching out to fix the other person's emotions, to ensure they feel exactly what you want them to feel? That is the urge to weave, and it is the most fragile kind of work. The people in your life cannot be owned, and they cannot be controlled by the strength of your own worry. They are like the wind. They will move through your life in their own time and in their own way. Your job is not to hold them. Your job is to be the space where they can pass through. You have been working so hard to be the architect of your own history. You have been trying to build a shelter out of expectations, but the shelter is blowing down and you are exhausted. Why not let the structure fall? Why not let the wind blow through the space where the walls used to be? You will find that you are not vulnerable. You will find that you are finally free to walk through the world without carrying your own walls with you. The sunlight of the present is waiting to warm your face, and the ground of the earth is waiting to hold your feet. You have done the hard work of carrying the burden. Now, let yourself have the mercy of putting it down. The weight of the silver needle is gone. The heavy, woven cloak you once wore to protect yourself from the wind has been unraveled, and the threads have returned to the earth. You are standing in the middle of a vast, open night, and for the first time in such a long journey, there is nothing for you to finish. You do not need to stitch the shadows together. You do not need to collect the echoes that drift across the mountain. You are simply a witness, a deep and quiet vessel that allows the world to move through it without holding on to a single thing. Feel the space you occupy. It is a soft space, a safe space, a space that requires no armor. Let your breathing become even slower now, a gentle ebb and flow like the tide beneath a calm moon. With every breath, you feel the tension leaving the arches of your feet, the muscles in your calves, the deep, tired knots in your thighs. Your legs are heavy and supported, sinking deep into the comfort of your bed. The floor is solid beneath you, the house is still around you, and the world is continuing its cycle without your help. You are permitted to cease your guarding. You are permitted to let the internal map you have been drawing finally dissolve into the dark. Your shoulders are letting go of the burden of the day. They sink, they widen, they become part of the stillness. The small muscles around your eyes, so used to focusing, so used to searching for threats in the shadows, are finally smoothing out. There is no one to watch, no one to impress, and no one to convince. You are just a human being, resting in the safety of a night that knows you completely. The thoughts that come now are like dust motes dancing in a single beam of light. You do not need to catch them. You do not need to name them. You just watch them drift, and then you watch them fade, leaving the air clear and cool and utterly silent. This is the peace of the mountain garden. It is the peace of the basin when the water has finally stilled. All the frantic energy you used to invest in fixing your past or in securing your future is returning to your heart as a quiet, steady warmth. You have been running toward an horizon that never arrives. But you are arriving now, right here, in this moment of suspension. You are held by the gravity of the earth, and you are sheltered by the velvet dark of the sky. Nothing can hurt you while you are resting in this awareness. Nothing can demand your attention. Your mind is like a quiet pond in the center of the woods. The reflections of the stars are clear on the surface, undisturbed by any pebble or breeze. There is no need for the pond to decide which star is the brightest. There is no need for it to judge the moon. It simply reflects what is, and in that reflection, it finds its own perfection. You are that pond tonight. You are the space where the night rests, and the night is deep, and the night is ancient, and the night is kind. You have done enough by simply being present. You have done enough by simply choosing to sit with the echoes until they turned into silence. The fear you carried about being unfinished has lost its sting. A plant is never unfinished. A mountain is never unfinished. A night is never unfinished. They are simply in a constant, beautiful state of being. You are the same. You are not a work in progress that is failing to reach a goal. You are the fullness of this moment, manifesting as a living, breathing soul. There is nothing to achieve. There is no status to reach. There is only the rhythm of your heart, beating in time with the quiet, pulsing center of the universe. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, feel the boundaries of your body beginning to blur. You are becoming as soft as the mist that rolls over the mountain at dawn. You are becoming as fluid as the water in the basin. The tightness of your identity, the rigid lines of the story you told about who you are fading away into the dark. You are not your history. You are not your mistakes. You are the deep, resonant silence that exists before a sound is ever spoken. You are the empty space that holds the entire world. There is no clock ticking in this place. There is no calendar marking your worth. There is only the long, slow inhale and the even longer, slower exhale. Let the rhythm carry you deeper. Let it pull you down into the gentle, dark current of the night. You are safe to let go of the needle. You are safe to let go of the cloak. You are safe to let go of the person you thought you had to be. In the dark, there is only the truth of your own presence. And that presence is quiet. And that presence is enough. The stars are not judging the distance they must travel. The trees are not judging the height they must reach. They are simply, purely. Existence in motion. You are the same. You are the simple fact of life, experiencing the depth of the night. Let every muscle soften. Let every thought dissolve. Let the last thread of the day drift away from your falling onto the forest floor, becoming part of the earth from which you came. You are home. You are resting. You are finally, entirely at peace. If the dawn arrives, it will bring with it the birds and the light and the possibilities of a new season. But for now, the moon is your only companion. The silence is your only teacher. You have reached the end of the mountain trail, and the cabin door is open, and the fire has been banked low, and the air is soft and cool. There is nothing else to carry. Inside, there is nothing else to explain. You have arrived. You are here. You are enough. What if the silence you have been running toward was not an ending, but the very beginning of finding your true self?